Welcome to our QuarkXPress 2015 webinar series. This is part 1, Creating eBooks. My name is Matthias Günther and I'm going to lead you through this webinar. What we're going to show you today is how you can create and design an ePub inside QuarkXPress. There's going to be a second part later on that shows you how to deploy that ebook. So in this session today, we're going to show you how you create the ebook. One word before we start. It is the first time that we're not showing a live event, but a pre-recorded event that we share through our YouTube channel. To leave comments, which we will answer quickly, just use the share your thought field below this video. If you have longer questions or you're looking for more answers or you want to have some feedback from other people using QuarkXPress to create ebooks, please visit our forums at forums.quark.com. So let's start. You can see here what I'm going to cover. So we first have to jump into some theory. Then I'm going to show you how you create a reflowable ePub out of a print layout. Afterwards, you can see how you can create a fixed layout ePub from scratch with interactivity added. And then I'm going to show you a fixed layout from a print layout, because maybe some of you want to reuse your print content for an e-publication. And at the end, I'm going to show you how to export for Amazon. So if there's some things that you're not interested in, please just skip forward using the YouTube player. I advise you to watch through all of it because some of the theory you will use later on. And I think it's nice to know all of the options that you have when you create an e-publication. Okay, so I need to go into some theory and I'm trying to make this quick so that you don't get bored, but I think it's important to understand that what you are creating. So you're creating an ebook and there can be many formats. Some vendors have proprietary formats, some bookshops, some electronic bookshops, they require actually a proprietary format or a standard file. There can be copy protection. Remember, we're not going to show you copy protection here of an ebook, so a DRM, a digital rights management solution, but you can always add that later on, or you can ask the book distribution service to add that at a later stage. Of course, you can also add interactivity or just have very text-savvy books. So it's very hard to say what is the typical ebook, and I'm sure you know what kind of an ebook you want to create, what you have in mind. Think of an ebook though as a PDF. I know it's a dangerous comparison because it's not a PDF, it's rather HTML that we're doing, but think of it as a document that you can't view by itself like a PDF. You need something like a player, a reader software to display that ebook. So in case of PDF, you would maybe use Acrobat or use Preview on a Mac, or you could actually, in some of the browsers, they have PDF previewing capabilities. And an ebook is the same. It's not like an app. Remember when we showed you App Studio, how to create native apps? The app is actually a program, an application. It's running by itself and it's displaying content that's within the app. For an ebook, that's different. It's a document, a file with all of the advantages and disadvantages. An advantage is you can just send somebody an ebook and they can read it. You can't do that with an app. But you need a player, a reader software that displays that ebook. And that's somehow or sometimes a problem because not all players or all reader software will display the same. Just think of the black and white Kindle device. A player can be a device, of course. It can't show you animations or video or color. So somebody reading your ebook on a black and white Kindle, which are great for text-savvy books, might be disappointed if you have a video in there and they can't see it. So what I'm going to show you here today, I will create two different kind of books, a reflowable book and a fixed layout book, and export them in a standard format ePub. The advantage of ePub is it's a standard, it's not owned by a single vendor, so many of the book distribution services and also the reader or the device software can display ePubs. It's not proprietary. And if you remember the early days of the web, your web page kind of displayed differently depending on what browser or platform you use. And unfortunately, that's still the same with ePub. So when you create a lot of interactivity and a lot of effects, then please think about what your readers will use to display that file. If you, let's say, export only for the iBooks store from Apple, then, well, you're safe to assume that iBooks is going to be the standard. If you're saying, well, I have that as a download on my web page, then of course you need to think about, well, I should support a lot of players and maybe add less interactivity. Or if you want to export to Amazon, Amazon is using a proprietary format that is similar to ePub but not the same. So we need to use a converter, and I'll show you that, to export to Amazon's format. So besides having all these thoughts, you also have to think about reflowable ebook and fixed layout ebook. And that's something we're going to talk about. Also, QuarkXPress can export in different versions of ePub, version 2 and 3. The good thing is you don't need to worry about it. QuarkXPress will use the right format when exporting, depending on what kind of files you used, what kind of interactivity and stuff like that. However, as ePubs are basically HTML, you don't see that typically when you open an ePub. It looks like a packaged format, like one file, and your readers will also not see that. Restrictions of HTML still apply because it's HTML. So let's say some typography features are not possible when you use live text just because HTML doesn't support that yet. On the other hand, you're getting the power of HTML, so you can use HTML5 or CSS animations without having to use something like Flash or Silverlight. So there is some big power behind that, but there's also some restrictions, and we'll see some when we start exporting. I briefly mentioned that there is Reflow and fixed layout ePubs. So what's the difference? Reflow is basically a text-savvy ebook. So the name indicates it reflows. So it's not like in QuarkXPress when you design a page and text can't leave the text box. It's more like TextEdit on Mac or Notepad on Windows, where you have text in the document, and when you resize that, you can see that the text reflows. Let me briefly show you that. See? So the text, when I have this larger or smaller, reflows. So the advantage is it really adapts to the device. So on a large device, you will see a layout that adapts to the large screen, and on a small one, you have a different rewrap. So that's great. Disadvantage is Reflow cannot have so many interactive effects. So audio and video is possible, but for example, an animation is not possible. So that's something to keep in mind when you create a Reflow. You have some advantages. The big one is almost every device can play these ePubs. So think again of the black and white Kindle. And the disadvantage is that you might be limited in your interactivity and in your design. So it will not look like you designed the page. If you need that, then you need to decide for the fixed layout ePub. And I'm abbreviating it sometimes with FXL. So that's great for design-savvy books. It really looks like you designed it on the page, with a few exceptions that come from the HTML limitations. But imagine it like a PDF or like a print page. It's really kind of like made on paper, right? And that's why you would choose that format, or it's a design-rich HTML page. And of course, you can add a lot of effects like animations or slideshows. So that's the advantages. It really enables you as a designer to design your page and add interactivity. The disadvantage is some players might not play it at all or just show the text, so it looks kind of funny. And if you have designed this for an iPad, but you're watching the ebook on a 16:9 Android device, on a tablet maybe, then of course you have letterboxing, you have black lines at the side, just because you designed it for a different aspect ratio than what your readers are using. So that's kind of the considerations you need to have up front before you start designing your ebook. And I'm going to show you both, just so that you have a feel how it looks like and what you can do with it. The good news is with QuarkXPress 2015, you don't need to decide which of the two formats you want to create up front. If you want to do, you can do both. I'm sure you probably just want to do one, but if you want to do both, you can do that. So let's get started. So if I want to start an ebook, a Reflow ebook or a fixed layout ebook from scratch, I just go to New Project, and then instead of choosing Print, I choose eBook. You can see this area changes here, and I have my page, which is in fixed width. So depending on what you do, it means something different. So it's always your cover page for both, for Reflow and for fixed layout ePub. For Reflow, afterwards for the other pages, this is ignored because, of course, it reflows, it adapts to the device. I have my page count. 2 is kind of a sensible minimal number because, of course, you have your first page and then you have your text, and I can create margins. So if I say OK, it looks very similar to what you might expect from print. It enlarges a bit, and I have my page 1. There's already a picture box in here because maybe you just want to create a cover, and I have a page 2 where I can create some text. Let's do a very simple one before we go into more advanced things. So if this is my page 1, and I'll just put a box on here, and I'll call this page 1, and I'll enlarge this a bit, right? Make this maybe really large, 72, and here I go here on my page and just call this next page, and also enlarge this. Then I would have a very simple ebook, right? So if I export this, and I often see that because that's a common mistake the way it works. So if I say I want to export this as ePub, I have 2 options. I can choose Reflow and fixed. Let's go Reflow first. I just export it on a desktop. I have some options like resolution. Since I don't have images, it doesn't really make sense to say anything here. So I call this ePub 1, right? And I say save. I get a warning that, well, fonts are being embedded, so I need a license for that to actually embed the fonts. And let's go to my desktop, and here's my ePub. How do we view an ePub? Well, there's different ways of doing it. One, I associated this with iBook from Apple, right? I'm using a Mac here. Of course, everything I'm showing you here is also working on a PC. On a Mac, on newer OS X versions, iBooks is pre-installed. It's a pretty good ePub viewer. So what I've done here is I've just created this very, very simple ePub, and you can already see the difference. Here's my page 1, and if I click on it, nothing happens. I can't mark it. So this is a screenshot. And a lot of people, when they're using QuarkXPress to create ePubs, forget that page 1 is always a screenshot. So don't put effects or a lot of text on there. That's your cover page. On my second page here, I actually have text. So I can select this, and you can see this stays live text. What other ways do I have to look at this ePub? Well, depending on what I have, for example, I have Calibre here. Calibre is a pretty good ebook reader, right? A standalone. Of course, there's plugins for browsers if you want to view that in a browser rather. So I just added my ebook here. I double click, and now this viewer appears. You can see if I go to page 1 and actually drag that, it's an image, right? And if I go to page 2, there's my next page, and there I can actually select it again. So same thing here, just displaying it a bit differently. I can go into full screen view if I prefer to read that. iBooks also offers me that. So there's 2 readers on a Mac, and Calibre is also available for Windows. And the third one I'm going to use is Sigil, right? Sigil is more for displaying the internals of an ePub. So let's do that while we're at it. I'm going to use Sigil, and here you can see again image. I have a table of content that's automatically created. We'll talk about that later. There's my next page, and you can see a lot of the stuff is really what you know from maybe creating web pages. It's HTML or XHTML, there's CSS, there's images, there's audio, video, stuff like that. And Sigil basically shows you the internals of an ePub. So though the ePub looks like a single file, it's really not. It's a clever zip archive that contains all of the things that you can see here in Sigil. And that's why we're using Sigil to look at some internal things later on. But I wanted to show you one thing. I'm going to go to Calibri for that. I can see here my title, ePub made using QuarkXPress, and author is QuarkXPress. Of course, when I later on create my real ebook, I don't want to have this. So how do I change this? It's very easy. I go back to QuarkXPress, and in layout, you can see ebook metadata. So since I didn't fill anything out here, QuarkXPress needs to do some defaults, and it just defaults in QuarkXPress and created with QuarkXPress. So if my title is maybe test and my author is Matthias, and I'll just leave the rest like it is, and I'll export this as an ePub again. Let's maybe call this ePub 2 now, again as a Reflow, and I save this. Okay. And I go back to Calibri, adding it. You can see now it's called test and my author is Matthias. It's not using the default names here anymore. So that's a very simple demo how to create your ePub. It wasn't very exciting. So let's go into the more exciting stuff. So I'm back in QuarkXPress and I'm going to use a print layout. And this print layout I want to export as a reflow ePub, not as a fixed layout. We do that later, as a reflow ePub. So it won't have the same design. It won't look the same like my pages here. It will look a bit different, but I want all of the elements to be in here. It's a print layout, nothing prepared yet. Remember, my page 1 is going to be a screenshot. That's fine. So let's go to page 2. And here I have different elements that I want to see in here. So there is a palette, and you might remember that from QuarkXPress 9 or 10, that is called Reflow tagging. And of course, I could now use the Reflow tagging palette to say, well, I create some articles and I create some components of the article, like the headline, the body text and stuff in there. Well, let's do that in a second step. I first want a very, very simple step. So the good thing is QuarkXPress 2015 allows me to export a print layout as a reflowable ePub without me doing anything. So let's call this ePub 3, right? And let's just export that and have a look at how this looks like. You can see Reflow tagging palette is automatically being populated. And let's have a look at how my ePub 3 looks like. I'll double click it. So this is going to open in iBooks in iBooks. And here I can see the screenshot of my first page. And here is my text. All of my text has been added. So that's great. It's live text. It kind of keeps the styling that I've used before in my print layout. But the images, they don't look so nice. They're all at the end. The text is in the beginning and the images are at the end. So how do I fix that? I don't want it to look like that, right? I want to have the text and the images associated. So for that, let's go to this image here. And I want to have the image in my Reflow appear after capability. For that, I can just insert a callout anchor. Remember, callout anchors and print are being used to specify the position of an image box or an image relative to a text without moving the image itself or automatically moving it when the text moves. But in this case, I just use that capability to show where the image should be associated. So I say insert callout anchor, and you can see there's an invisible mark being added here to the text box. It won't print, it won't export, and it's active because I have a red border. And afterwards, I just choose my image, go to callout anchor, say associate with callout anchor. You can see the little line connecting these two elements. That's the only thing I've done. So let's go to export as ePub again. This is going to be my ePub 4 export. Let's have a look what actually happened here when I'm doing that. So proven capability, and the image of the devices here. So proven capability, double click, open again in iBooks, and let's flip through, and you can see the image that was at the end is inserted here after proven capability. So if I go here to ePub 3 again, you can see there's my proven capability, there's no image yet, and the image is here at the end. So that's a great way of adding or specifying images where they should be when you're using the Reflow view. Of course, what I could also do is, if I want to have more images and I still don't want to destroy my print layout, I can create images here at the side so they won't print if I ever need to print this again. And then again, use maybe the callout anchor here. So say I want to insert a callout anchor. I go to this image here, I associate this, and you can see now whatever I place into this picture box is going to be displayed after the first paragraph of that text. And that's the same way how it would work with videos. So if you want to add a video for Reflow view, then again, you could just alter your print layout, just duplicate it and modify it, or you create an image box here, you associate that with a callout anchor, and then you need to use the HTML5 palette to actually create an image, a video. So you click on video, and then you just select the video file that you want to embed and that you export. So that's a great way of associating text and images or videos and audio a bit more with the layout that I have. Of course, if you see that some of the order of the text elements or the video elements are not correctly, then you can also use the Reflow tagging palette to actually move elements around. So if you want the image here, let's see what kind of an image that is. Is this lady here to be associated with read the full article here? You can just move this up or down, so changing the order of the components that you have in your Reflow tagging. And if you're interested how this Reflow tagging works in more detail, please have a look at the webinars that we did for QuarkXPress 10 and 9. That hasn't so much changed. It's just much easier to apply. And the great thing is you can use a print layout. You don't have to manually add all of the components. You just export with callout anchors. You have a very, very easy way of specifying where images or interactive elements should be, and then you just export that out of your print layout. So a great way of doing that. And maybe one thing that I should mention is in my print layout here, I haven't used any style sheets. I know that's not a very good way of doing that, but when I use style sheets here, so I create maybe a new one and then I call that headline. It can be a paragraph or a character style sheet, and I export that. That's actually how the CSS styles are going to be called. They're getting a P or something or a T in front of it, but still you can associate your print style sheets with CSS style sheets. Just maybe I'm not so happy with my ePub because I spent a lot of time designing this print layout. And if I go to, well, let's import this into Calibra, right? So I'll go into Calibra. The design doesn't really look like I've designed it in print, which can be great, right? If this is used on different devices. So if I read that, similar what I just showed you, text edit, you can see it is reflowing, but that's not really the design I designed. And yeah, it's great if I just want to have information being conveyed through text, but I want to design an ePub that actually looks like I designed it here in QuarkXPress for print. So how do I do that? Well, it's easy, right? I go new project, eBook, layout type, and then I start designing. Well, I have one prepared. So let's go to my eBook here that I have created. So if you look at layout properties, you can see this is an eBook layout. And what I've done is first page, remember, even in the fixed layout, this is going to be a screenshot. It's going to be a title page. On page 2, I've just redesigned my ePub a bit. Yeah, you should use larger font sizes. Maybe that's something I could still fix here, and maybe less less text and more images and stuff like that. But that's fine, just ignore that for now. I just want to show you how out of an ebook layout, you can create a fixed layout EPUB that exactly or almost exactly looks like you designed it. Exactly or almost exactly just depends on the formatting you use. If HTML5 can do the formatting, then it should look exactly the same. If it can't, then it will look a bit different. For example, I should never use auto-leading, or I should never use fractional things that I've used here. So that's going to look a bit different, which is fine because I left enough space here, so I don't mind too much. I don't want this pixel perfect. If I do, I need to change that, but I still want this to look almost exactly the same how I designed this in print. So if I do this, all I need to do is I go export as ePub. Remember, the only difference to the one that I created before is I used an ePub layout. I used all of the tools that QuarkXPress give me. And now I'm going to export this as fixed. So this is going to be my ePub 5, right? So I'll export that. Yes, I will have some licenses for fonts. Let's go to Finder. There's my ePub 5, double click. It opens again in iBooks. And you now can see here's my first page. And there's my second pages, right? It looks exactly, let's get rid of this or maybe have a look side by side. It looks exactly like my print layout, right? Here's my print, there's my print. Yeah, maybe my leading is a bit different. It looks pretty okay, you know? So yeah, I basically have created a fixed layout EPUB that represents my print. It's still live text, you can see that. I can select that here and I'm fine with my layout. So I've preserved that. It still looks a bit static. I want this to be more interactive. So how do I get this to be more interactive? One thing could be I want this element here to be an animation to move in. And similar to like in Reflow ePub, we've used the HTML5 palette to add videos or audio. I will use the HTML5 palette here now to add an animation. So I have this box selected. I go to animation. You can now see that there's an animation icon being added, a visual indicator that doesn't export, it just tells you that this is an animation. And I want this to fly in from the right. And 5 seconds is fine. Once I want this to ease in and ease out, and that's all I wanted to do. So let's export this as ePub. This is going to be my ePub 6. ePub. Yes, I have the fonts. Go to Finder, and I think I just hit that window desktop. So let's go here, and I open that in my iBooks. I go to the next page, and now you can see that this animation is going in, and it's still live text, right? And I've selected it that I can actually interact with it, so anytime I click on it, this will play again. If I don't want that, then in QuarkXPress I will just say I don't allow interaction here, and then this is being taken away, right? So there is different properties that you can set for this animation. But that's really easy to enrich my fixed layout EPUBs with some elements. Let's do another element. Let's do maybe align a slideshow here. So I want to have a slideshow that plays on my third page. So for that, I'll just go to slideshow, and now I need some slides. I will add them from some picture files. So I have 4 images here. Let's just select these 4. Say open. So there's my images. I can kind of flick through them and see them. Well, let's first adjust the box to the pictures and then see that we align them again like this. Okay, and this is my slideshow, right? I want this to be the first one, the second one, the third one. I will maybe use, well, slide is fine, a fade effect. I want to autoplay and loop them. And I want to have an animate pan and zoom, which is kind of a Ken Burns effect in my slides. So this one, I want to start with this image here, and I want to stop the Ken Burns effect like this, right? So it's going to move this woman a bit out. Next thing, this one also should be animated, so I'll start there, this is fine, and then I zoom into my server, so this is going to look like this, and the rest I'll just leave like that. Right, so easy way to add in slideshow. Let's export this as an ePub again. I will call this ePub 7. And let's have a look how this looks like. There's my first page. Second page still has the animation. Third one here, you can see there's my slideshow. I have these little marks because I allow interaction. I should maybe take that away. And you can see it has a slide effect, a Ken Burns effect. So it kind of zooms in and moves a bit the way I designed it. And it just moves on. Of course, if I don't want to wait, I can use my mouse to actually see the slideshow quicker and flip through it, right? And if I don't want the little dots down there, I just go back and say I don't allow interaction. But of course, then my reader can't flip through the elements by him or herself. So this is really how fixed layout ePub works. You design almost like in print. You have pixel perfect layouts with a few restrictions that come from HTML5, and then you just add interactivity, and it looks almost like you designed it, and you have all of the elements that you can add here. So everything that's in the HTML5 palette you can add for fixed layout ePub. Of course, there's one disadvantage. Let's say I'm using a different viewer. Let's use Calibra to view this fixed layout. Okay, so I'm going to double click this. I'm going to open this. Let's have a look in full screen so you see how it looks like. I go to the next page and you can see animation works. The text doesn't really look so good anymore, so something went wrong there. And my third page here also looks a bit different. But the nice thing is it does show my animations. So that's something where I now need to start looking into why this doesn't work. So what's the limitation of this ePub reader? Next thing, I'm going to go to Sigil. Let's have a look how Sigil displays this. So here's my first page. Fine, it's just a screenshot, right? So now I want to have a look at the second page, which is here. Animation works, great. Text looks fine, great. So it seems to be more a limitation of Calibra. And let's go to the third page. Animation or slideshow works. The little dots look a bit different, right? So but the text looks okay. So this is really something that you need to keep in mind. If you only design for iBooks, which is a very, very good ePub reader, probably the best right now on the market, then you can expect that everything looks exactly the same. If you design for different readers, for Mac and for Windows, please do some tests with the reader software or the devices that you expect your readers to use, because they might look a bit different than what you've seen when you just use one player, right? So this is kind of as a warning. Unfortunately, there is no way around it, and it has to do with readers not being compatible. It's an industry problem. So just I wanted to make you aware of that, because that's something you will probably face when you do this kind of stuff. So what's the last thing that we're going to do? One thing I promised you is you want to see how you can export a print layout as a fixed layout ePub. Well, there's not an easy way to do that, because of course, typically in print, you have a different aspect ratio than you have on your devices. So if I go back to my print layout, this was this one here, you can also see, well, I used a very unusual page size. This is one page. So how do I get that to export as a fixed layout? And the only way how you can really do that is you just create a new layout. You choose the format that you need here. Then maybe I do a split view, right? So I go window, split window, and maybe I want to vertically split that. And I'm going to show my layout 2 in here, my layout 1 in here. And now I start dragging or copy and pasting stuff over, right? So I'll just choose all of these things and maybe drag them here onto this page and then start rearranging it. Let's make this a bit larger, right? And now I can start rearranging it. I could also semi-automate that when I go back to my layout here and I say utilities cloner, and I say I want to clone all of the pages of my layout 1 to the print layout 2 that I've selected there, and copy style sheets and stuff like that, and then copy that over. And you can see that it copies over quite okay. But of course, since the page was a bit larger, I probably need to arrange some things. And then I can export this now as a fixed layout ePub. So that's a way of doing that, right? So that just as, you know, some ways of making that work, I think you should adopt to the device or the media that your readers are going to use. So for print, typically you have too small font sizes to be automatically used in eBooks. So, you know, I would recommend rework your layout a bit and adjust it. I think your readers will be happy when you do that. So, last thing that I wanted to show you is what happens when I export for Amazon, because maybe I need to submit this to Amazon. Remember, this was the Reflow tag print layout that we've created. And of course, what I can do is I can export layout as Kindle. So I have used ePub all the time. I want to use Kindle now. So for that, there is a converter tool that is called the Kindle Gen utility from Amazon. You can either get it from Amazon's website by clicking on here. You can just go to Amazon's website and download it. Or if you've already downloaded it, and I think I have done that, I just select the Kindle Gen here, I say open, and that's the only time I need to do that, right? I need to do that once, and then I can go to export Kindle, I say save, it will export, it will ask me for the font license, and then in the background, it will call the Kindle Gen and create an Amazon compatible file. Of course, you could do that manually if you wanted to. So there's the Kindle Mobi. So if I double click that, what will open now is my local Kindle previewer. And here you can see my elements. So there's my cover page, and if I flip further, there's my new article. Here's all my text that I have, proven capability, and the image. Unfortunately, they wrap at this font size that I have, so let's use a larger font. Right, it's a Reflow element, so you can see they still are associated and all of the images at the end. So it's very similar to the Reflow view that we've seen in ePub. But there might be some elements, or there will be some elements that are lost because the Kindle format, this format that we are exporting here, isn't as powerful as the ePub 3 format that we are using. So, quick recap. Avoid fractional font sizes or auto-leading. Don't use the force style. And if you want your fonts to be embedded, you need to use OpenType fonts or TrueType fonts because it's HTML5 and Type 1 fonts, PostScript fonts just don't work in web pages. Use larger font sizes, I didn't, and use RGB colors, I think I also didn't. Just experiment a bit with the new layout type, and you'll see that. The nice thing is your proofing device is basically in front of you, your Mac or your Windows computer, and of course you can export that easily to an Android device or to an iPad, and look at it too, and see how maybe the colors have changed. And for Reflow, I would really recommend you to use the print layout because it's nice that you can associate images or kind of specify the position of images using callout anchors. Same thing for videos. You should try other effects. I know animations don't work in Reflow view, but slideshows should. And in fixed layout, you can use all of the effects that are in the HTML5 palette to add interactivity, and then you should test frequently. Again, remember, page 1 is always a screenshot, so whatever you put on there won't work. So no effect or no reflow tagging will appear because that is your title page. Well, and that was our first webinar. So let us know in the comments field below how we did, how you liked it, whether there's information that you still need. We have a second webinar coming up with ePub or Amazon Kindle format submission. And of course, if there's some questions that we can answer, we will answer them then. Also, go to forums.quark.com to ask more questions. I am there too, and all of my colleagues will help to answer the questions you might have for ebook creation with QuarkXPress 2015. Thank you.